Is that yes?
I'm familiar with the name.
Former FBI agent Kyle Seraphin, who recently received a letter from the FBI saying, be quiet about this. Kyle, welcome to the show. You're not following orders.
So, Kyle, you had some issues that brought you here as a whistleblower. Joining me now to discuss is FBI whistleblower Kyle Seraphin. Kyle, thanks for spending some time with us again. Joining me now is FBI whistleblower Kyle Seraphin. Joining me now is a frequent guest of the show, former FBI special agent, whistleblower as well, Kyle Seraphin.
Let's bring in Kyle Seraphin. He's the FBI whistleblower who helped expose government censorship of our First Amendment rights.
Right, we're lucky to have him with us today. He's Kyle Seraphin, a real whistleblower himself.
Now, we only have this memo because a recently suspended FBI agent called Kyle Seraphin brought it to the public, and we're grateful that he did. Kyle, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Why did you decide to become a whistleblower?
I just made a decision that this is America's information, it's not mine, and I'm not going to let the FBI steamroll me and my family.
Kyle Seraphin, he's a former FBI agent. He's the host of the Kyle Seraphin podcast, and he joins us on the phone. Hello, Kyle. Great to have you back with us, sir.
And so, ladies and gentlemen, help me welcome Kyle Seraphin.
Let's turn it over to two former FBI special agents turned whistleblowers who are holding the Bureau accountable, Steve Friend and Kyle Seraphin.
A brave FBI whistleblower who is a friend of our show, also Dan Bongino's. Kyle Seraphin. He's the host of something that strangely is called The Kyle Seraphin Show. Follow him on Twitter. I'm Sebastian Gorka. I'll call you later. We'll talk guns. We'll talk optics.
All right. Any update on your whistleblower situation?
No, I expect to be attacked for the foreseeable future.
Okay. At least you're realistic. Thanks so much, Kyle.
All right. Kyle Seraphin, former FBI agent, also host of the Kyle Seraphin podcast. Thanks as always, Kyle. Good to talk to you today, sir.
Perfect, man. God bless you, brother. Thank you for standing up for the truth, man. Thank you for coming on.
Steve, Kyle, you guys are great Americans, and it's an honor to have you on the program. Have a great weekend.
And follow him, Kyle Seraphin, with a PH on Twitter. God bless you, Kyle. This is
Well, so Kyle, thank you so much for joining us. Great chatting with you.
Kyle Seraphin, thank you.
Kyle Seraphin, I can't thank you enough for speaking out. I knew you guys were out there, and I knew it was just a matter of time, but you got a lot of guts putting your face and your name to this. You're doing a service on behalf of the American people, and from the bottom of my cracked and broken heart sometimes, thank you very much.
Take a look behind the curtain with a real whistleblower and American patriot. Prepare to embrace the uncomfortable truth because this program has no time for comforting lies. Here is civil liberties enthusiast, Second Amendment defender, and recovering FBI agent Kyle Seraphin.
Hello, my friends. Welcome to the Kyle Seraphin Show. Today is Wednesday. It's August the 23rd. We are rocking and rolling. We are streaming live from Liberty Hill, Texas, America. We were threatening some rain here earlier last night. We got a couple little drops, and it looked like it was coming in, but we are back in the heat dome. The heat dome is where apparently you show this really scary graphic on your news program with a big swirling heat ball over a part of America that I live in. And then I guess the heat dome can decay into heat lightning, which brings about my favorite, the Thunderdome. The Thunderdome is when two climate activists enter, only one leaves on some sort of bicycle or EV powered vehicle. Isn't that right, Ryan? Isn't that how the Thunderdome works?
I think so, man. You got me cracking
I think so
up.
too. So we're coming in kind of hot today. We're coming in on two wheels, folks. For those of you who have never been in a vehicle that has been up on two wheels, that's when you take your turn far too quickly and the vehicle's center of gravity shifts to the point where only 2 wheels of the 4 are on the ground. That is how we are running in today. I've got no articles. I found nothing that I wanted to read to you. What I wanted to do was do a big reflection on the scenario, big picture of what's going on in this country right now, and maybe an interesting take that I haven't heard anybody else sharing. This came from, horribly enough, a Twitter interaction where somebody was like, what's the solution? What are we looking at? And the scenario came to me in my brain, which is full of nerdy little clips and tidbits and things that I wish I didn't know, but unfortunately I have to know because I can't forget them. And it's the story of the Kobayashi Maru. So we're going to talk about Kobayashi Maru. That is the name of this episode. We will get some of that very, very shortly. And then Ryan had a pretty funny little comment on it. We've got a handful of clips. We're going to be showing you a bunch of videos. So if you're not watching on YouTube or Rumble, if you are not streaming this on Twitter with us, you're going to be missing out on some of the visuals. I would encourage you to check them out. Come on, join us over on Rumble if you want to be in the live chat. I see a bunch of new faces today, so we're really excited about that. Let's start off with a quick thank you to our sponsor over at Patriot Coolers. You guys can find your own Patriot Coolers. You can get a tumbler like I've got sitting on my desk right now. You can get one of their rotomoted coolers, which are equivalent to like an Arctic or a Yeti. Far superior, I would say, due to the branding and the fact that this company is out of Houston, Texas. Not the weirdos in Austin like the Yeti guys. They're out of Houston, which is still one of the big oil capitals of the world. PatriotCoolers.com. Check them out and use promo code Kyle. That's Kyle. It's very simple. It's 4 letters and it saves you 10%. It'll save you 10%. And if you buy any of their bigger items, you're going to get free shipping easily. If you buy, I think just 2 tumblers is going to move you into the free shipping range. 10% off. Supports our show. Supports disabled vets. We appreciate them. PatriotCoolers.com. Check out all their stuff. They've got some really good branded stuff. But this is their big product right there. This is one of those things you're going to want if the world goes to hell. Ryan just told me he's ready to just start stacking ammo, snatching souls, and sitting in a blind up in the mountains. I think many of us are looking at this country and going, what in the actual hell has happened to our country? Not only are we living under the geriocracy, but we are actually living under an idiocracy. And if you have not seen the movie by Mike Judge, you are missing out on some of the references, but we'll get there today. We're going to give you at least a little taste of it. And I'll just apologize up front that the language is spicy. But as our societal fabric is getting stretched, I think we are getting stupider and we are tolerating dumber voices. So we're going to see some of that. One of those dumber voices is, in fact, the current president of this country in a really sad way. So here's the layout. I'm going to give you kind of I'm going to give you a scenario. I'm going to tell you a story from one of my buddies who is a special forces operator. He's a Green Beret. And this came out of his Q course experience. The Q course is the long pipeline of training that goes in from the time you get out of basic training all the way up until you get the green hat and you become a Green Beret, someone who can claim the title of a Special Forces operator who goes on into the field. And then generally speaking, you don't get any respect until you have a couple deployments under your belt. But there's a mindset that Special Forces has always gone after. It's unconventional warfare. It are the people that are doing force multiplication. We had this interesting Twitter space the other day where they were talking about if you live in a blue state and you are a red voter, if you are a conservative living behind enemy lines, as it were, you got 2 options. You can beat feet, as we like to say in the military. You can beat feet and leave. And many of you probably should choose that. And the reason why is because the alternative is you have pretty much a duty to yourself, not to anybody else, but to yourself, to become a counterinsurgent in that area. Your job should be sharing information. You should be winning hearts and minds. These are all very, very military terms that most of you got familiar with in the Iraq and the Afghanistan conflict. Hearts and minds campaigns. You have to be moving people towards the goal of them looking at their current situation and saying, man, I didn't like Trump. I had all these irrational fears about it, but you know what? My 401k was doing an awful lot better. My paycheck went a lot further. My gas prices were lower. My overall experience in this country was better. You have to be out there sharing that, whether you want to call it a red pill, whether you want to call it a white pill, whether you want to call it no pill at all because you're scared of pills because fentanyl kills right now. Under this administration, we're seeing an awful lot coming in and it's increasing. If you want to call it anything, you should be calling it a counterinsurgency. And if not, it's time for you to bail out. It's time for you to find a place to go. We got into a little discussion, Miss G may be in the chat out there. We got onto Twitter, and the question is this. How come we don't have more federal whistleblowers that are out there sharing their experience of what's going wrong in the government? And the answer is they face the same situation that you may face living in a blue state if you are out there going, I don't agree with any of this. you have obligations. You have family members. You have things that are going on. You have, spouses with jobs that they can't leave easily. So if you are going to be behind enemy lines, if you're going to be there, counterinsurgency is your job. Hearts and Minds campaigns, living the example, showing people why being someone who supports Trump or Vivek or DeSantis, I don't actually care about any of these things. Those are playing within the paradigm of the scenario that is put in front of us. I think we need to go outside of it. So here's the story from my buddy Dave in his Q course selection. So he goes to Special Forces selection. One of the things you do famously is a navigation course that is called the STAR course. I've been on the STAR course. I almost died on the STAR course. It is a challenge specifically because it's North Carolina. It's full of brambles, briars, and stickers and all these wait a minute vines, and they're really hard to cut through, and they'll slice your body up. And then there's all these nasty places to walk. They're called draws, but a lot of them are full of wet, swampy stuff. It's a horrible place to go and train on purpose. It's supposed to be difficult, and it is. It's very challenging. And when it's really hot, there's no water. You may not be able to carry enough water with you for multi-day sort of training, bivouac stuff. So it's a challenge. So all these guys go out there and they give you the rules of the scenario. The rules are as follows. If you are caught running on one of the hardball roads, that means like either a dirt road or something that is paved, then you will be eliminated from the course. And you must hit all the points. You must follow the rules of all the instructors that give you. You have to basically go out and follow the navigation star, which basically takes you to these 5 different points. And when you end back up at home, you have to do so in the allotted time. Otherwise, you fail the scenario. So it's a time. There's a couple of rules that you can't break, which is to say, if you run on the roads and you're caught, what they don't tell you is that you cannot do this thing. They say if you are caught doing this thing, then you will be removed. And that goes to the point of where we're at right now. And I think many of you have seen the elections that happened in 2020, in 2022, and you're saying there's a lot of cheating happening. We don't know exactly what it was. We have allegations and suspicions. One of the things that Ryan and I always go back and forth is he shares a lot of allegations. Without a lot of evidence behind the allegation, it is just that. It looks like that. We call that smoke without the fire. You need the fire. You need to dig down to it. So we don't always have that, but we know that there's something wrong. We feel like there's some cheating. And so when we think about that, we have to decide whether we want to be like Special Forces operators and try to win, or if we want to play within the rules and lose. Now, you can make the STAR course navigation on time under your own 2 feet. It's really difficult and it can suck, and you do it at night and you're not running with night vision. So there's a big difficulty there. Or you can do the kind of time-honored counterinsurgent, the special operations troop motto, which is to say, if you are not cheating, you're not trying. This said a little nicer, you ain't cheating, you ain't trying. Okay? You have to cheat in order to win if you want to do it most efficiently. Your job is to think outside of conventional boxes and work in the unconventional space. I had an instructor when I was going through one of my courses who said, you must operate in the gray. The gray is, we told you that if you get caught, you're removed, but we didn't tell you that you couldn't do this thing. What we told you essentially was don't get caught. Okay? That is the idea. So here's the story of Dave's buddy. So they're all out there. Everyone's doing their navigation. Of course, the instructors know what is the choke point, where the places are that they're going to catch you on these hardball roads, because you want to run the roads because it's way faster to run on a road than it is over open territory or breaking brush. Anybody who's ever done land nav in the military knows what I'm talking about. You're having flashbacks. You're having PTSD. I apologize for triggering that reaction. It is a difficult course. It's a difficult thing to do on purpose. So you get out there, you're running the roads. Well, these guys are doing it at night. So all the SF guys, these Q course selection candidates are running through. And everybody's given a certain loadout. They have the same loadout. They got a Blue Force tracker in. The first thing they do is disable that so they can't track you, because if they track you on the road, obviously they're going to be able to prove you cheated. So those guys take that thing out. So now their safety net is gone. And they're all running these roads. There's a great scenario. This choke point is set up. There's a couple of instructors there. So they're sitting in a Humvee. They got a bunch of spotlights on the rim of it, and they're ready to light up anybody who comes cruising through. And the first guy comes cruising through, and they light him up. And they say, you, candidate, step forward, surrender your tag, whatever, you're out. And he gives up. And he gets put in the back of the Humvee, and he's done. He's out. The second guy shows up, all right? And he comes running all up. They hit him with the lights, and they go, hey, you, candidate, whatever, what number are you? And he says, screw you, and he dives into the bushes. and the bushes are full of brambles and spikes and stuff, and he low crawls through this horrible brush. And as he goes low crawling through, he's getting all sliced up, but everybody is sliced up at the end of the day. So he calls, crawling through all this brambles and brush, and he comes out, and the instructors look at it and they go, no, it's not worth it. I'm not going after that guy. And he gets away. And the third guy comes running up the road. And these are all real people, by the way. This is an actual story. This is not like a parable. The third guy comes running up the road, and they light him up and they go, tell us your candidate number and surrender. And he reaches into his pack. And one of the things that you get as a safety mechanism is what's called a force penetrator flare. It is a flare that you hit the bottom of it. It's jet activated. It'll go through 3 levels of canopy. They used them in Vietnam to be able to symbolize where the person was under the jungle canopy, and they could put in a rescue mission. So for whatever reason, they give you that as part of your loadout. If you're in danger, you can pop the flare and it goes out. This guy pulls his flare out, points it directly at the windshield of the Humvee, hits the back end of the thing, sends this sparking flare, which explodes on the Humvee windshield, and the instructors dive out of the way because there's a explosive, flare flying at their faces, and they weren't expecting it. And this guy runs off into the darkness. Now, everybody finishes the course. All the final candidates that have survived this sort of ordeal are all standing in a row. And they can't tell the guy who went low crawling off into the bushes. And they go, all right, all of you have passed on to the next phase. The only thing you must do is produce your flare. Produce your flare. Okay? And so they all show their flares except the one guy who's got the flare that's expended. So he holds out an empty flare and they go, you, step over there. We're going to interrogate you for a minute. So they interrogate him. And they say, where's your flare? And he said, I deployed it. And they said, yeah, we know. Where did you deploy your flare? And he said, at the windshield of the Humvee that was telling me to surrender. And they go, why did you do that? And he says, I deployed my flare because the rules were that if you get captured, if you get caught running on the road, then you'll be eliminated. And I didn't want to get eliminated. That's it. That's the end of the story. And they said, that's the kind of outside the box thinking that we are looking for. Go back and join your classmates. You passed this iteration. So I want you to consider the idea that we are in a scenario now where you have done the thing that needed to be done, and now you have to play within the rules, but only the rules as they are stated. And for those of you who are Trekkies, and there are plenty of you, these nerdy types that love this, the story of the Kobayashi Maru is one of those classic pieces of Star Trek history. It's the reason why Captain James T. Kirk was the guy that everybody loved, because he knew how to break the expectations, and he would always try to win. He was the quintessential American. It's like, you can't do that. And he goes, no, can't I? Because I'm going to do it anyway. And so the Kobayashi Maru scenario, we're going to show what it is. And I've got that. That's video clip number 4, Ryan, if you want to get it queued up. This is a kind of a longer clip, but it's Star Trek, so it's entertaining. I think you guys will get a kick out of it. We are now in the American Kobayashi Maru scenario. You'll also see Kirstie Alley is in this from her days when she was playing the Betazoid captain, which is kind of, like I said, I don't know why I know those things either, but I do. I know too much about Star Trek for my own comfort. Let's go ahead and throw this up. This is video clip number 4. This is the Kobayashi Maru scenario. We're going to apply it to America today. Let's go ahead and run it.
Now entering the neutral zone.
Warning, we have entered neutral zone.
We are now in violation of treaty, Captain.
Stand by transporter room ready to beam survivors aboard.
Captain, I've lost their signal.
Alert. Sensors indicate 3 Klingon cruisers bearing 316 Mark IV, closing fast.
Visual. Battle stations, activate shields.
Shields activated.
Inform the Klingons we are on a rescue mission.
They're jamming all the frequencies, Captain.
Klingons on attack course and closing.
We're
Klingons
over our
on
heads.
attack
Mr.
course
Sulu,
and
get us out of
closing.
here.
I'll try, Captain.
Alert. Klingon torpedoes activated. Alert.
Evasive action. Engineering, damage report.
Main energizer hit, Captain.
Engage auxiliary power. Prepare to return fire.
Shields collapsing, Captain.
Fire all phasers.
No power to the weapons, Captain. Captain, it's no use. We're dead in space.
Activate escape pods. Send out the log buoy. All hands abandon ship. Repeat. All hands abandon ship.
All right, open her up.
Any suggestions, Admiral?
Prayer, Mr. Savick. The Klingons don't take prisoners.
Lights.
Lieutenant, you are looking at the only Starfleet cadet who ever beat the no-win scenario.
How?
I reprogrammed the simulation so it was possible to rescue the ship.
What?
He cheated. I changed the conditions of the test. Got a commendation for original thinking. I don't like to lose.
All right. So, Captain Kirk does not like to lose. That's why he's such an American sort of icon. This is why we love that. This is the Cold War mentality. It's like if the scenario does not fit a losing or a winning scenario, then we just change the rules of the scenario, or we color outside of the lines. We work in that gray space, the space that is outside of the hard delineated sort of parameters. And there's a couple of people that are out there making some ideas about this. I'm trying to get Leo D'Onofrio on to come and talk about his idea. I can do it in about 2 minutes, and we may kind of hit the high points on it, but I want him to flesh it out because it's his idea. I listened to it in a long discussion that he had with a couple of lawyers, and it's better off to hear it from him. However, I will paraphrase it at the end of this. But instead of dealing with a scenario where we are slowly losing, which I think is the generally conservative position, the idea that you are defending ground as a conservative, you are trying to conserve what exists, is always going to put you on the back foot. It's always going to put you in a lose-lose scenario like this Kobayashi Maru scenario, because the progressive left is constantly on the attack. And they are not attacking symmetrically. They are fighting asymmetrically. They are fighting about climate change, which has nothing to do with cutting genitals off young kids, and yet they're willing to do that too. They're willing to do all kinds of weird things that have nothing to do with each other, other than they are all attacks on all sides of the thing that people who are conservative are trying to preserve. And so you are always in a defensive position. You are always on the back foot. That puts you in a potential losing scenario. The nice thing about the people that are conservative voters inside of blue areas is that you can fight that by winning hearts and minds. You can fight from all angles. You're literally surrounded at all times. So everybody that you deal with is a potential win on the hearts and minds category. Okay, so where are we sitting right now? What is going on in this world? We talked about climate change. We talk about the fact that they are trying to do some messaging wins. There's a couple of things that are happening at the same time. Number one, they are trying to weaponize the idea that wildfire fires, which happen in all parts of the world, and they happen during summer months when things are the hottest and they are the driest. That is standard. They have happened for all time as far as we can tell. In fact, there are certain plants that require these fires in order to germinate. But they're acting like this is a thing that is a man-made failure. We talked about the 15-minute cities, the 15-minute prisons, as many of you people have pointed out, that they are a social bubble where they contain you. Those are part of that's part of the narrative that's being driven because of quote-unquote climate change, because of, look, fires are bad. Okay, but here is the foolish response that we have to it. Can you play clip number 3 for me first? This is Joe Biden when he finally made it out to Hawaii. By the way, 172 days and counting, hasn't made it out to East Palestine. Hasn't made it to Ohio, because that didn't help his narrative. That actually just showed that government failure is pretty significant and the Department of Transportation doesn't do what it needs to be doing. But he did finally make it to Hawaii because there's a lot of blue voters out there. And this was the message that he had to share about how, it's really not about the people in Hawaii who have lost loved ones, people who have been killed in fires. And it's not even really about climate change. It's really about Joe. It's always been about Joe. Can you play clip number 3 for me?
I don't want to compare difficulties, but we have a little sense, Jill and I, what it's like to lose a home. Years ago, now 15 years ago, I was in Washington doing Meet the Press. It was a sunny Sunday, and lightning struck at home on a little lake. It's outside of our home, not a lake, a big pond, and hit a wire and came up underneath our home into the heating ducts, the air conditioning duct. To make a long story short, I almost lost my wife, my 67 Corvette, and my cat. But all kidding aside, I watched the firefighters, the way they responded. There's an old expression. I grew up right across the street from a fire hall in Claymont, Delaware. And the expression is, God made man, Then he made a few firefighters. You're all crazy, thank God. The only people who run into flames to help other people. And they ran into flames to save my wife and save my family. Not a joke. The smoke and the firefighters here can tell you sometimes smoke is so thick from the windows out, it was that thick inside the home. And we were insured. We did not have any problem. But being out of our home for a better part of a year was difficult. I can only imagine what it's like to lose your home.
I'm just gonna talk about my stories because there's people that died. I don't have any connection.
I'm shocked that he didn't bring up the other pieces that his son died from the burn pits in Iraq that he didn't die from. So that didn't happen there. But this guy is on a comedy tour, apparently. Not a joke. It's not a joke. He's on a comedy tour in Hawaii where these people have just lost everything. If you notice early on in that video clip, the guys who've got the little ukuleles behind him are looking like, what planet have we arrived on? And also, I want to make a correction. Marlene in the chat corrected me that Kirstie Alley's character was a Vulcan. She was not a Betazoid, which makes me feel slightly better about actually not knowing the right answer on that. I actually feel better when I know less things about Star Trek than I initially claimed. So that's pretty good for me. But here he is doing his comedy routine, going out there talking about how it's really about like a fire we once had where I didn't lose anything and nothing happened, but there was some smoke.
We choose truth over facts.
You just catch me off guard with this. Look, there's more to this, okay? We're going to play clip number 1 here. His inability to connect with human beings is the reason why so many people said there's no chance this guy got 81 million votes. It's one of the reasons why you look out there and go, is there any possibility that this guy was rightfully elected in this country? And or were they pulling the strings behind? It's because of these video clips. This guy is totally unrelatable. He's totally lost it. And he lost it long before he was elected. We'll use the air quotes here. Long before he was elected in 2020. Let's play clip number 1. Once again, it's all about Joe. It continues to be all about Joe. Let's rock that one out real quick.
America's deadliest wildfire in over a century. And Jill and I have what's left, walked Front Street, what's left of it. We've surveyed the damage from the air as well. The devastation is overwhelming. To date, 114 dead, hundreds of people unaccounted for. I remember when I got the call, my first wife and daughter, I was a young senator, and I got a call in Washington. I hadn't been sworn in yet. I wasn't old enough. And I was hiring staff in the Capitol at Teddy Kennedy's office. And I got a phone call saying from my fire department, and the young first responder kind of panicked, you got to come home. There's been an accident. I said, what happened? He said, your wife, she's dead. Come home. Come home. The tractor trailer had broadsided her and killed her in a car accident along with my little daughter. And I remember all the way down from Washington home wondering what a lot of people here are wondering. What about my 2 boys? How are they? They were in the car. I never got a read on that. Were they going to be all right? They were badly injured. Were they going to make it? Had they made it? Wasn't until I walked into the emergency room that I saw that they were there. The difference.
There it is. There it is. It's all about him. V Gunn just pointed out we could actually do an entire segment. We could probably do a whole show of did Monty Python or did Joe Biden say it? Because these are absurd. These are self-parody. It goes on and on. He's talking about his own personal life story. And that is not empathy, people. That has nothing to do with him touching the hearts of those around him. You can actually see Jill Biden cringing when she's going, oh my God, he's going to go do the story about the wife again. And these poor people just want to hear some hope. Like, what about the plan? What about the plan for the federal government? They're going to be handing out $700 to each household, not to each individual. That's the plan. That's the entirety of it. That was it. Totally probably against the constitutional order. It doesn't actually fit in the Article 2 powers of the presidency to start handing out money to people in disaster zones. But I guess if it's already been allocated to FEMA or something, maybe they can allocate it in that way. He can make that decision. It doesn't slow down the $115 billion or whatever it is that we're sending over to Ukraine. So God forbid we take care of American citizens first. And in order to prove how much he really does care, we've got video clip number 2. Joe, this is really a visual. So if you're not watching, you're going to want to tune into about halfway through the show here and check this video out, or you can find some of it online. Joe Biden apparently was so moved by what was happening in Hawaii that he passed out like he's done so many times. He checked his watch. He decided it was bedtime. And he couldn't pay attention for the funerals or the unloading of the bodies of the 13 people that he got killed over in Afghanistan. And apparently he couldn't care less about the people that were sitting at this dinner in Hawaii. So he just just dozed off. Here we go. Let's go play video clip number 2.
By someone they may have never met before. We are a community that relies on family, on ohana, whether by blood or by friendship. But like many others, my son's home burned down.
There it is. That's apparently the most powerful man in the world. And he can't make it through a dinner speech where someone is talking about how his son's house burned down and sort of the nature of Hawaiian culture to band together like family, ohana. I think I learned that word either when I was in Hawaii. I have a brother who lives in Hawaii. He lives in Kauai. Or I may have learned it from Lilo and Stitch. So thanks, Disney. But Joe Biden did not learn it. He did not understand that it also means that you have to pay attention to the people who are suffering and maybe do something about it. In the meantime, it was not well received. It turns out that people are starting to wake up. This is the reason why your counterinsurgency is necessary. It's not going to all be self-inflicted victories or self-inflicted wounds. It's not going to be unforced errors all day long, although there are plenty of them. We saw, if you'll queue up clip number 5, we saw that Joe Biden's welcome in a very blue state was maybe less warm than he hoped. It turns out people actually want their issues addressed. And when they are in a time of crisis, they would like to see a responsive federal government, that empathy that they were promised. And yet it didn't materialize. And the reaction is somewhat stimulating. It's actually somewhat a little bit hopeful to see that people are starting to wake up just a tiny little bit. Clip number 5, if you would. So a little cheer of FJB, not a lot of love there as he awkwardly walks around like a human being wearing a diaper that may or may not be filled. Our sources over at Secret Service has told us the diaper stories are real. They are not exaggerations. And that's awkward for everybody. It's that I heard it in the chat. I saw it in the chat, rather. Elder abuse. That's what we're talking about. We're talking about basically abusing this empty vessel of a human being. For all of the failings of Ron DeSantis saying something about listless vessels, you want to talk about a listless vessel. That man has no rudder. He gets pointed wherever he goes. And it seems like it's being pointed by this woman who really, really wanted to sit in the White House and be first lady. So that's Jill. And anybody else that tolerates it is complicit as well. So there we have the FJB moments. But that doesn't mean that you can't do evil with these people and that Joe Biden is not complicit in it. And one of the reasons why I say we have to change the paradigm when the scenario is lose-lose, part of the losing is that we can't even get real, regular reporting on it. We can't actually get facts on the ground in a meaningful way because they are willing to change the game. We've got a couple things in here. And if you're sticking around with us right now, stay tuned to the end. We're going to break something here that you're not seeing anywhere else. It came from our friend on Twitter, George Hill. So at Senior Chief EXW, put it out there. It was very, very small. So we're going to try to boost the signal on this little document. But let's just show what happens. You've got the clip of Nick Soder. If you want to go and ask questions, critical questions of this regime, you're going to get handled in a way that has not been very common in America. You were supposed to be able to ask questions. That's what our freedom of the press means. And yet, this is how you were treated. A little bit more rough than we would hope. Go ahead and run that clip if you like, Ryan.
Piston was wrapping up a media briefing in Lahaina today when a man confronted him about the information being publicly released.
We have no idea if any of them are children. We have no idea.
That's independent journalist Nick Soder. His social media says he flew in from Louisville 2 days ago. Police asked Soder to calm down and even physically held him back. He persisted, but it eventually ended peacefully.
No, sir, we don't know who you are. You're not identifying yourself as media.
Are you law enforcement?
Yeah.
They talk to your law enforcement?
So we're not going to answer that question. How many of these 10 cadavers are...
The Maui department, okay? The press show is over. Yeah.
Right, so he's not going to answer my
done.
question.
Thank you.
Yeah, take pictures of me.
There's no need for hacking.
You're with Maui Police, right?
Yeah, he's done with the press conference.
Appreciate your patience, sir.
Yeah.
Get out of my way. Who are you?
With the Maui Police Department.
Okay, and what's my crime? You're literally pushing me.
The press conference is
I
over.
don't f***ing care if the press conference is over. Get out of the way. Sorry. All right, so sir, 110 cadavers, but we can't identify. We can't identify how many of them are children. This is get out of my fucking dude. Get off my throat.
Relax, sir. Relax.
No, I'm not gonna get.
Relax.
No, I'm not gonna.
Okay.
I'm not gonna relax, dude. No, I'm not doing anything illegal. I'm trying to ask a fucking question, and we can't get the answer for it. How many of the 110 dead are children? You know who are children. They're cadavers. You have the bodies. You know how many of them are children. How many children are dead? Step back, please. How many children are dead, Mayor? So you're just not going to tell.
I don't know. I wish
yes,
I knew
you
the answer.
do. How many children are missing? You
I
know.
wish I knew the answer to that. I would be happy to answer that.
You have no estimate as to how many children are missing?
I guess
Nothing?
we can end this right now if you guys want. Sorry,
This is one of the biggest questions that the people of Ohio have.
That's enough of what we're seeing here.
It
So
always takes one or two to ruin it for everybody.
it always takes one or two to ruin it for everybody. It always takes people who are journalists asking questions to try to get the answers to really ruin the whole point of the press conference, which is, in fact, propaganda. And so this is what a police state looks like, folks. It's been brought up on multiple different arenas. I know Dinesh D'Souza talks about it. I know that Dan Bongino talks about it. I was part of a documentary sort of laying out the case that is going to show that the American experience right now is closer to a police state than it's ever been. And one of the reasons is when you have public officials that are not accountable to the people that elected them or to the people that are the press who are supposed to hold their feet to the fire. That's literally what has always been the case. You ask the hard questions. They either have an answer or they don't. The American people make up their mind, and then they vote the people in that are supposed to do it. Hawaii is a really backwards little world, and for those of you who live in Hawaii, you know what I'm talking about. It is run by a small group of people. My brother's island, he used to tell me, this goes back 25 years, and he probably wouldn't say this anymore because he's been living there so long. But when we first got there, and he'd been there for, 5 or 6 years in Kauai, he goes, it's run by like 12 angry Hawaiian men, like the whole island is. And everybody just sort of, it's a very elder-based culture. It's very tribal. That's their choice. That's their area. I don't care. It doesn't matter. I wouldn't want to live there. That's behind enemy lines for me. And yet you talk about, this sort of culture of people stepping in front of a reporter and telling him he's done. You saw the bullying tactics. And Nick is doing what reporters have always done. They're trying to get the answer to the question. They're trying to put people's feet to the fire. And the reason is because if they're not going to answer that question, it tells us a little bit about what's going on there as well. They clearly know more than what they are saying, and they're not giving information out. It's tragic. And then the other tragedy is that we have this old, decrepit man who's out there talking about, his own personal tragedies, and he can't even be bothered with the specifics of what's going on the island there. So I didn't want to leave this in. There's still going to be a lot more reporting that comes out of what happened in Maui, and I'm probably not going to be covering all of it. We'll cover it when the stories get pretty obvious, and there's a narrative that we can weave together for you all. But, any of you who are watching this already know. It's absolutely disgraceful. It's truly disgraceful. But it's par for the course for this particular president. Not surprising. We're going to see a couple of other sort of disgraces. I'm going to go back in history a little bit. We talked about masks and what goes on there and why they're so important that we are aware. It's really, really easy to forget because there's so many atrocities that our government keeps getting involved in. There's so many outrageous things that they just want you to move on to the next news cycle. We have to remember these things. We have to bring them to the forefront, and we will. But before we do that, I want to say thanks over to my friends at Catholic Vote. You all know Catholic Vote. Ryan, if you give me a full screen right here, this is The Loop for Tuesday, August the 22nd. And let me pull up my copy of The Loop as well, because what it says is we have President Trump says he's not going to attend the debates. in some ways, I was against this initially. And you can read the story there in the Loop. You just go to catholicvote.org and put in your email address. You'll be able to get the Loop emailed to you first thing in the morning. He says that he's not going to be attending the debates. Basically, he's got a 62% polling rate. And the next closest is DeSantis at 16. Behind him is people like Vivek Ramaswamy. Amusingly, someone referred to it as the vice presidential debates. I don't know if you guys have seen that, but generally speaking, the vice presidential debates happen after we have a front runner for both of the parties, and then whoever their second in command would be, whoever their vice presidents, they have a debate, and then the potential, the nominees from each party have a debate. I think it's funny that these people are all running for second place right now. Maybe not. And I'll tell you why in just a second. But they got other couple things. They're talking about rain in the Southwest because of the tropical storm Hillary that came in and wiped out emails. We're seeing the old. That's Tuesdays, isn't it? I'll pull up the other one later. Anyway, check out the Loop. It's got lots of good information, and it is available to you early in the morning. Again, catholicvote.org. Check in and put in your email address. Sorry about that. I have the wrong Loop pulled up. The reason why is because I've got another piece of my email right here, which just came in this morning, and this is. I'll show you the screen if you can see it. You probably won't be able to. This is our certification of incorporation in the state of Delaware for the Suspendables Support Fund, the SSF, which we are going to be able to start taking care of our guys like Garrett O'Boyle and Marcus Allen and the next whistleblower that comes forward from the FBI. And there will be another, I'm sure, and they will get crushed. We just got our incorporation information in the email, so that actually... I won't be able to show it easily because it won't focus on the camera. But we do have it done. We've been slowly working on this, our 501c4. And once we get the final bank account set up and we're ready to disperse the monies, we'll go do it on a big program. I think Seb Gorka said he's going to do a expo on it. And Dr. Gorka actually is going to be on our board. He volunteered for it. So nice to get a little bit of support from folks. So we're going to pivot a little bit towards the memory. And I mentioned that we are dealing with not the smartest people in America that are running us. I've talked about the geriocracy, which is the old, but we also have kind of an idiocracy that's been going on in this country. And Idiocracy was a movie that was made by Mike Judge. I think it was in many ways, it predicted sort of this time, although he didn't get all the details right. He had a black president who was a former WWF wrestler. And instead we ended up getting Donald Trump, who was also on WWF, WWE at one point. And in a lot of ways is kind of a TV star of that sort of just wild character. But the part about Idiocracy that was the most obvious to us is that we were breeding dumber and dumber, and we were allowing less and less capable people to be in charge of things. I've got a little clip. It's mostly for humor, and then we're going to go back and talk about some of the stuff that went on with the COVID tyrannies. But this is a clip from Dr. Lexus' office in Idiocracy. If you have kids that are young and you need to screen them from some language, there's some language in this. It can't be done without the language. We used to actually know that comedy and humor and some foul language kind of went together. So this is a rare exception. We're going to play this only because I couldn't get a good bleeping of this. If you'll cue up video clip number 8, Ryan, we will play Dr. Lexus. And I want to draw some parallels between how prophetic Mike Judge was with this sort of moment. Tune into the end when he starts asking about the tattoo as well. The beginning of it is just kind of the setup. But let's go ahead and run video clip 8 for me.
I'm seeing things. I think it might be because of these drugs the Army put me on. But if you could just get me well enough to get back to base.
Right. Kick ass. Well, don't want to sound like a dick or nothing, but it says on your chart that you're fucked up. You talk like a fag, and your shit's all retarded. What I do is just like you know, you know what I mean? Like...
No, I'm serious here.
Oh, don't worry, Scro. Now there are plenty of tards out there living really kick-ass lives. My first wife was tarded. She's a pilot now.
I need for you to be serious for a second here, okay? I need help.
There's that fag talk we talked about. All right, so that'll be this many dollars. And if you could just go ahead and, like, put your tattoo in that shit.
That's weird. This thing has the same misprint as that magazine. What are the odds?
Where's your tattoo? Tattoo? Why don't you have this?
Oh, God.
Where's your tattoo?
Oh, my God.
Why come you don't have a tattoo?
Oh, my God.
You're not unscannable, are you?
Oh, my God!
You're unscannable.
Unscannable! No, you don't understand. You gotta let me talk to someone in the army. Wait a second. They're all dead. Everybody I know is dead. Oh my God!
Why come you have no tattoo? How many of you feel like this is where we're going with our medical community? That we're going to be walking into doctors' offices, they're going to find out that you're unvaccinated, and they're going to hit the scary button that says you're unscannable. Ryan, you think so?
No doubt, man. No doubt.
It's coming for us right now. Like, this is a comedic representation of how ridiculous and how foolish the establishment is. Our medical community has gone to checklist medicine. They're not allowed to think for themselves. If they do think for themselves, if they do have any ideas that are contrary to the narrative that didn't get put down in the little book of the guy, if you didn't see the video clip, if you're listening to this, what you missed is that our Dr. Lexus is wearing a jersey. He's wearing like a scrub jersey that is like a polymer material, and it's full of these different pharmaceutical brands logos, like he was on a NASCAR team. And so that's kind of crazy. And then it's like, yeah, what do you got?
Did I tell you about how I went to the doctors last week to get a COVID test for the spike protein, and they're no longer doing it anymore? And I had the conversation with my doctor. I said, you know what? I find it very strange that there has never been a trial study on any one of these vaccines. And you guys are supposed to be doctors, right? You guys are supposed to be intelligent. And not one doctor in America decided to think for themselves and go, you know what? There's no studies that show how dangerous or the side effects for these to these vaccines, yet you guys still continue to give them. And then she goes, well, it's not that easy. It's not that simple. All doctors have what's called, I forget the exact terminology, but it's like an ESID score, which is basically like their social credit score or their, and she basically said, so we have different categories, and vaccines being one of them. And she says, so let's just say you're the type of doctor who doesn't believe in these vaccines, you're anti-vaccine, and you go, okay, I'm not going to vaccinate any of my patients. She goes, if you choose to not vaccinate any of your patients, you're going to get a 0 in that category. And if you get a 0 in that category, you pretty much have to 100% every single other category, because if your ESID score gets to below a certain level, then you're not able to accept Medicare and Medicaid. And if you can't accept Medicare and Medicaid, you can't keep the doors open. And I said, so you're willing to, you're telling me that these vaccines are, certain ones have a 25% chance of giving a child autism. So you're not going to warn a parent about that. You're not going to tell them about the side effects. You're going to inject them with this chemical cocktail that you've never researched, and we don't know how bad the side effects are, so you can keep the doors open. Am I hearing that right? And you should have seen the look on her face was just like...
It's pharma sponsorship, right? So this is literally where we've gone. Mike, like I said, Mike Judge is a prophet in some ways. He's looking at this and he's saying that these people are sponsored by the pharmaceutical companies that are pushing the drugs. And so that's the comic way of looking at it. But, you know, whether it's 25% chance of autism or 10% chance of autism or 1%, you can't do what's called informed consent if you don't understand what the risks are. And as a layperson walking into a doctor's office, the odds of you understanding the depth of what they're trying to share with you, if they share it with you at all, or if they give you one of these like long pamphlets. Think about any time you've gone and had your kids get shots. And I know, Ryan, you've done it. I've done it with my kids as well. You go in there and they just go, okay, this is what we're doing next. Like, it's flu shot season. You know, do they give you a long pamphlet for you to read and like see like, oh, well, these are the risks, these are the side effects, this is how we developed it, these are the safety studies? No, they don't give you that. They just tell you like, yeah, we recommend it. We recommend everyone get a flu shot. And I'm sure they're getting the gold star for it. So in any case, Mike Judge kind of locked in on something that's really scary. And so the funny version of you're unscannable, which we just saw, because he doesn't have the tattoo. Why come you don't have no tattoo? I actually feel like some of the questions you asked your doctors will get that foolish of a response when you kind of bring them the simple. I literally had a doctor ask me whether or not they thought my wife, who was postpartum when we had our third child, whether or not the doctor said, should we do the CT scan with contrast or without contrast? Now, as many of you can probably guess, I'm not a doctor. I was a paramedic and I've been around. I've seen people get CT scans. I have wheeled people to go get CT scans. I know that it is the right thing to do if you want to find out if there's an increase in intracranial pressure, which was one of my suspicions based on the fact that she had certain symptoms that I don't need to get into, but it was pretty obvious to the doctor as well. I said, look, my concern is an increased intracranial pressure. And she's like, oh, yeah. Should we do the CT scan with or without contrast? You're asking me, a guy who doesn't know anything about, I don't even know how CT scans work that well. Like I've seen them, but I don't know how they work. And I don't need to. It's not my job. When somebody asks you how to do their job, that should be scary as hell. And so what we end up with is this highlight reel, which if you'll play the highlight reel with, Mika Brzezinski, this is something that my buddy Garrett sent me a little bit ago. It's been entitled Never Forget. You can't find this on YouTube, the actual original compilation, but it's all over the place on TikToks and Instagrams and things like that. This is a kind of a tall format sharing over and over the types of people. And if you'll notice, Kay Ivey is in this compilation, and she's talking about it too. And she's a Republican governor in a very red state. This was a bunch of people who went out there and demonized you for being unscannable, for being unvaccinated. This is how the police state kind of handles business. Go ahead and run that clip if you would, Ryan.
You are the unvaccinated. You are the problem. It is the unvaccinated who are the problem, period, end of story.
The only people that you can blame, this isn't shaming, this is the truth. Maybe they should be shamed, are the unvaccinated.
It's time to start blaming the unvaccinated folks, not the regular folks.
Anyone you came into contact with will blame you, as will the rest of us who have done the right thing by getting vaccinated.
Because frankly, we know that we can't trust the unvaccinated.
I think it's time to get our moral house in order, Anderson. It's the unvaccinated who are the threat.
All of us vaccinated folks are going to start wearing masks to protect the unvaccinated folks. It's called a Christian value.
You're basically punishing the vaccinated for the sins of the unvaccinated.
People are not behaving honorably. The unvaccinated are basically saying, well, it's open season for me. I can do whatever I want as well.
The unvaccinated are basically beating their breasts, running around the country saying, we don't care, we're living free, and so forth.
We've been patient, but our patience is wearing thin.
The unvaccinated, a group that includes children and people acting like children. And the rest of us are starting to get pissed off.
The vaccinated feel the unvaccinated are making me upset or angry.
This is not about freedom or personal choice.
So there's a fair amount of data that showed that that they were trying to make this a moral issue. You can actually hear it in the words. They talked about the sins of the unvaccinated. They talked about getting our moral house in order. They said it's the good and Christian thing to do. And they denormalize you by saying the people who, we're talking about the vaccinated people, the normal people, and then not the unvaccinated people. That was Kay Ivey, who is actually a Republican. If you guys are cool with that, keep voting the way that you are. If not, we need to start pushing the envelope for some people who think a little bit differently and speak a little bit differently. If that's Donald Trump for you, so be it. That's fine. Saying that he's the only spear that can pierce the deep state, I think, is wrong. I'm going to play, do you have that clip queued up of the fitness routine? I just want to just show this as a contrast for the geriocracy, which I find the most offensive, and it includes even people who are in the Republican Party. If you are old, I don't want you running the country. There takes a certain amount of virility and it takes a certain amount of energy to go and fight up against that big, crushing media machine, which is now making religious or moral arguments against you. I'm not advocating any particular candidate. I just saw this today when it was in my feed, and I thought it was eye-opening to me. This is someone who's going to be in the debates tonight, I guess. This is a reason to watch it. You want to play that? Show me if anybody else is being able to do this sort of little workout routine.
Rails in your mouth.
Come on.
Bring them out, bring them out. Hey. Bring them out, bring them out. Yeah. Bring them out, bring them out. Hey. Bring them out, bring them out.
VIP coming live from the VIP. Heard the nightlife, lost life without me. Most feds in the state wanna see by me. The whole city got pissed, heard he got 3. That other nigga got a hip and shouted he not out. Who set the city on fire soon as he got free? The king back now, hold on me.
So if you missed it, you heard some cool music, but what you missed visually is that's Vivek Ramaswamy doing a bunch of I don't even know what those are called, like jumping burpees. He's doing really high jumps. I don't know if you've ever stood in your standing space and then tried to pull your knees to your chest for 30 seconds, which is how long that video clip is, and just walked away from it no problem. It's tiring. It's a reason why it's a fitness technique. They've got a really sweet home gym too, by the way. He's working out in a home gym. That tells me just something about the kind of guy that he is. I like it. I've met Vivek in person. I liked him in person. He was smart in person, and here's the reason why. I introduced him to an idea backstage before we went out and spoke. He listened to it. He absorbed it in real time. We turned around and got on the stage, and he immediately incorporated that thought process into his discussion about what he was going to do. He didn't have any talking points. He wasn't reading from cards. He basically rolled in there with whatever knowledge he had, whatever knowledge he just got a few seconds earlier, and employed it in a way that made sense to the policies and all the things I was saying were in alignment. It was just verbiage, phrasing, and maybe a nuanced piece. I want people that know how to operate like that. It doesn't have to be that guy. I'm just saying, if you close your mind to it, you have to realize that the Kobayashi Maru scenario is as follows. This is the way I see it. And this is why You need to prepare for some outside the box thinking. You need to be able to color in the gray right now. There's basically two possibilities. I mentioned this on my Twitter feed, so if you follow this, this is old news to you from yesterday. But let's say that Donald Trump wins. 50% of this country is going to lose their minds, and we're going to lose the country because half this country is going to be violent. If you thought that what happened in 2020, the riots that went on, some of you don't remember it very clearly, or maybe you lived in cities where it didn't happen. There was a military presence in Washington, D.C. on every single street corner in Northwest. In the area where the seat of government is, there were National Guardsmen setting up sandbag embankments. They didn't have weapons issued, but they were sitting there, and we had federal agents marching in body armor day and night, all around, armed with rifles slung. That was 2020 under Donald Trump, because there was the possibility that he might get reelected. If you think that that is not going to be just a light dry run for what's coming, you are not paying attention right now. That is absolutely the lowest threshold of insanity that we will see if Donald Trump wins. And for anybody who says, "Oh, then we'll just take them all out," this is not how it works in America. That is a lose scenario. Okay, that's one possibility. The other possibility is he gets the indictments hold, that they convict him, either kangaroo court or otherwise, they send him to jail, in which case we lose again. That's a very real possibility. You need to know that just because the people who are doing it are not serious does not mean that these charges are not serious, that jail is not serious. It's the same people that have come to me and said the FBI doesn't have a charter, they're not legally authorized under the Constitution, and therefore you don't have to obey them. Tell that to the 4 people who were shot in the last 2 weeks by the FBI, because they are really dead. They are actually dead. And so the FBI is real. These charges, however ridiculous they are real. And they are incredibly serious, dangerous options, because even if the people doing them are not serious, the result will be very serious if they take this guy and put him in under state charges either in New York or in Georgia, which is looking much more strong because they have the ability to do that. And they are dealing with corrupt, and is not fair. These corrupt, the prosecutor, like I said, a budget Cardi B trying to be a celebrity. They still have real capabilities, and they are really setting up for a massive crisis, pitting the Secret Service against people in Georgia law enforcement. That is not a good feeling. That is not a thing that we should be very looking forward to in any way, shape, or form. We have to think outside of that box. We have to deal with the Kobayashi Maru strategy, which is to say, reprogram the scenario. And maybe that's electing someone they didn't expect, and that person goes and leads the march on Washington to say this is unacceptable and we're taking back our government. That's a possibility. That's one option. There's another one that sits underneath a constitutional argument in how to actually take the vote before it happens. And I'm going to just sort of seed this to you. We're going to have a really kind of interesting show, I think, coming up tomorrow as well. We're going to be talking to Jacob Chansley, the so-called QAnon shaman, guy who has seen the wrath of the deep state. I'm going to have him talk first, and then I'm going to try to get Leo D'Onofrio on. I don't actually want to give away what he has to say, but there is a potential constitutional ability to short circuit the scenario, to do what Captain Kirk did. It actually exists within the Constitution, and here's the tease for it. Under the United States Constitution, under Article 2, Section 1, there is no provision for a popular vote. There is no provision that says American citizens at large have the ability to pick the president. It doesn't exist. And if you go and read it, you will find that the Electors Clause, which is Clause 2, and the actual Electoral College Clause, which is Clause 3, under that Article 2, Section 1, they explain to you very explicitly that right exists in the state legislatures. So when we talk about acting locally, there may be a real shortcut to this. There may be that flare down the windshield move. There may be the crawl through the brambles option. It's go and get away before you are actually caught. That may be the possibility that we can actually short circuit something like this. I want to hear Leo say it, and I'd love to find, if you know anybody who is a solid lawyer who works in the constitutional space, that is, they litigate based on the language of the Constitution, they do federal cases in that. I would love to have them on the show. So please have them send us a link. They can come. You can contact me either open DMs on Twitter, or they can go to kyleserafin.com and hit the contact me button, and you can send a message. It goes directly to my email. I'd love to have that conversation. I want to know if this is a possibility, because we need to short circuit the simulation before we go into the lose-lose scenario. And like I said, if you're not aware of how lose-lose works, it affects everybody. Even if you win the short term in the Kobayashi Maru scenario, let's say you go and you defeat the Klingons, then the people die. If you don't go in and you don't get killed by the Klingons, then the people inside the Kobayashi Maru die. If you go and rescue the Kobayashi Maru, you get them onto the Enterprise, then the Klingon warships come in and kill you. There is always a lose in that scenario. The only way you do it is you basically reprogram the scenario from the onset, so when you walk into the scenario, you're not dealing with the lose-lose. You have to add a third option. It's outside the box. And this is the only way that I see this thing going down, because as we keep seeing, as the suspendables talk on the back end, we're talking about a narrower and narrower precipice of safety and the possibility that we avoid serious conflict. And here is the conflict I'm talking about as well. Ryan, if you would bring up, we have a document that came out of George Hill's reporting. If you would bring that up for me, I would like to go over it with people. This is an FBI document. You're not going to see it anywhere else. And just let me see if I can pull it in here. I'm pull up on my screen. All right, if you can show the it's in Monday. Did you find it? It should be updated in Monday.
I'm going to it now. You can start talking about it. I'll get it up here.
Brilliant. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, this is unclassified reporting coming out of the Philadelphia field office. I'm going to switch camera views for you. And what it says is it's a summary of what happened to Craig Robinson in Utah. It says that the agent so-and-so, we're only seeing a piece of it. So this is a piece of the screenshot, but it says so-and-so happened with the agents, did not respond to their command. Online posts suggested that the man owned a number of firearms, including a long-range sniper rifle and tactical equipment. This incident was reportedly not the first time that the man was contacted by the FBI regarding violent online threats. You're seeing the document as I am reading right here. In addition to POTUS, the president, the man allegedly posted threats against top law enforcement officials overseeing court cases against former POTUS, Donald Trump. And since news outlets reported the incident, social media users across various platforms have engaged in speculation and conspiracies surrounding the perceived misuse of force by federal agents. Key in on that term, misuse of force. Many posts have included violent rhetoric against federal agents, specifically and law enforcement officers in general. And so then they cite a couple of things. Here's where it gets really scary. This is where the police state piece comes in. This is why even a win is a loss. Okay. On August 9th, 2023, an anonymous discussion board. Why is the FBI on anonymous discussion boards, by the way? Posted violent comments. Do you know what a violent comment is? Because I don't. I don't know what a violent comment is. I've never seen a comment that was actually violent. It was usually words. I grew up in the 80s where sticks and stones could break your bones, but words don't hurt you. And meanwhile, you've got these beta indoor dogs from the FBI, these analyst types that are putting this kind of equipment out there or this kind of information, and it's getting people spun up inside law enforcement. It says violent comments advising individuals to kill federal officers, including a number of tactics, techniques, and procedures, or TTPs. That's familiar to you, military and law enforcement types. Users suggested they use firearms to kill federal agents in their houses during the night, shoot them through the door if they try to approach, homemade smoke grenades laced with fentanyl, sniper setups, dead man switches, keeping loaded guns near the front doors with booby traps with poison gas canisters, a mounted, here you go, this is really good, a direct quote, a mounted automatic sentry weapon that will gun down the door. That's in direct quotes. This is what this analyst thought was a serious discussion. Incendiaries to defeat ballistic shields and helmets, all in direct quotes. On August 9th, another anonymous discussion board, because the FBI doesn't respect the First Amendment, discussed the importance of researching U.S. federal agents' houses and finding their homes, doxing these individuals, targeting the agents, start planting IEDs, tracking U.S. government officials, begin killing them. No evidence this is happening, obviously, and we're going to get to that. August 10th, another anonymous discussion board making comments about the Utah incident, demonstrating government overreach and employed calls of actions against law enforcement. These are people who say, quote, I hope someone shoots them too, quote, start blasting pigs, quote, investing in drones right now, end quote. I like that investing in drones is the same as someone shooting law enforcement officers to this person. They've talked about how to make a doorbell that they can use with some sort of homemade incendiary device. This is all listed out there. Another one, they go back now a year to July of 2022, talking about publication of Terrorgram community entitled The Hard Reset, encouraging racially motivated violent extremists, or RMVEs. You'll remember that from the Catholic document we put out, committing violence against various targets, including perceived grievances against law enforcement, blah, 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 blah. Here's the best part. At the bottom, which you can't see, it's a little small. Maybe Ryan can zoom in on the bottom of it. It says, unclassified for official use only. Analysts note, at this time, the DVIC is unaware of any specific or credible threats targeting law enforcement officers in the Philadelphia region. However, the FBI-involved shooting in Provo Utah could motivate threat actors to violence against the law enforcement community. It goes on and on, talking about Ruby Ridge and Waco, things that many of you are familiar with. They talk about false flags and psyops and the belief that all this stuff is being planned. So this is the analyst telling you, this is not in an objective way. The analyst is telling you that there are no credible threats, but there could be threats. That is the ultimate gaslight. That is what happens when you have a weaponized law enforcement agency that is going out there. And what are they doing? They are hyping people up and letting them know that someone could be coming for these federal law enforcement officers. So that ratchets up the threshold. That's going to ratchet up the people who go out there because the way the law enforcement shows up is more aggressive. And then when there's more aggressive law enforcement, it creates a more aggressive backlash by the people. People get shot, and then we have a whole new cycle. So shoot somebody, then get worried about the fact that you shot somebody and people didn't like it. Those people are going to react more aggressively. The federal agents are going to react more aggressively. Then they have to shoot another person, and then we start the cycle all over again. This is how we ended up with things that happened in both Waco, that happened in Oklahoma City, that happened in Ruby Ridge. This is a replay of the 90s. And interestingly enough, at that time, we almost defunded some of these federal law enforcement agencies. The ATF was on the way out the door at that time. It didn't have a home. Many people can look back and see that the reason why we had some of the actions that happened at Ruby Ridge and also at Waco were because the ATF was trying to make a name for itself and justify its budget. And so to justify its budget, it killed people when there were way better techniques to be used. And they've always been better techniques. Going in, they could have grabbed David Koresh when he was grabbing mail. Many people know the story. They could have done a lot of things. He was out in public on a regular basis, but they chose for a flashy raid in the same way we saw what happened in Provo, in the same way that happened in Albuquerque, in the same way that happened in Philadelphia, in the same way that happened in Henderson. This is a predetermined course of action. Once you start introducing more upgraded violent tactics, you are going to get a small percentage of people that react in an aggressive way. And it is not justified. And they just noted right here, no credible threats targeting law enforcement officers in the Philadelphia region, but we're going to get you all ginned up anyway. That's really scary stuff. This is the stuff of the police state. You get the police scared of the people, you get the people scared of the police, and then you move forward with whatever actions you are trying to do. You've provoked them into the action of violence, and then we end up seeing more violence, and violence begets violence. So I request a Kobayashi Maru scenario that we look and short circuit the stuff before it happens. Ryan, go ahead.
I got a question for you, Kyle. What would be the line in the sand that you would draw when you would either say, I need to get my family out of this state? Like, what line does the government cross that when you're like, all right, I'm putting on my night vision and going out into the mountains to snatch souls? That, like, where is that line?
It's not a line that I figured out yet. I think that's the difficult part for all of us. And that's why I'd like to see it not get to that, because that's an ultimate lose-lose scenario when you start moving into a survival mode where you're going to be dealing with this stuff. I don't want us to get there, people, and I think we can avoid it narrowly. But we've got to be aware of it beforehand. So like I said, that's what we're going to be talking about. As far as like getting my family out of a blue state, if I was living in a blue state, the answer is when you have a family. The minute that you're responsible for young lives that are not going to be able to go out and be a counterinsurgent the way you are, that's the line for me. You guys all got to make your own decisions. You're all responsible for them. But I do want you to have a little bit of empathy for the people that are in the same scenario, that are working for these jobs, that are part of this. If you're not willing to move, if you're not willing to pick up and go somewhere and solidify the red bases in places where you want to see policy enacted and live under the kind of laws that you want to live under, maybe you should have a little bit of grace for those that are out there against it.
Can you explain that a little bit? I know you got to run here, but for anybody out there that's living in a blue state, I'm in one with my son's mom. And why would you say that it's important right now to start looking to get your family out of here? Like, what is the aftermath of what's coming, and or how dangerous it could get? Like, what is your warning to people that are living in these blue states right now?
Oh, the biggest one is what we just talked about with the masking, the fact that people who didn't want to get vaccinated or get their kids vaccinated, there was something like a third of Democrats that were surveyed, a third of people that were getting the vaccine shots said that they thought it was acceptable to take your kids away for that. So if you're living with children, you are living with a liability. This is, the lovely part about having kids is they slow you down and you get a chance to have some of the most incredible experiences of your life by being a parent. And yet you have enormous responsibilities. And it's the reason why we played the Little House on the Prairie clip the other day. The option was they could stay in Kansas in the house that they built and the life that they built, and they could hang out there and get overrun by the Indians who are now going to be authorized, and the U.S. government wasn't going to defend them. That was a possibility, but they chose not to. They went for the safety of their family. I think when you have kids and you're a parent, your choices start getting limited. You start making decisions. Think about all the things that you've given up in your life, quote unquote, given up. You've chosen to give up because it's the right thing to do for your kids. You don't go out and drinking at bars. My wife and I were laughing about this the other night. There's like no reason why we would go out and spend a night out at a bar anymore. It just doesn't exist because we have little kids that need to be taken care of, and they are far more fulfilling and they're far more interesting, but they limit some of your options. You don't have the same options. If you are young and single and you want to engage, or you're unmarried and you've got grown kids, or maybe you're married and you have grown kids and you want to be a counterinsurgent behind enemy lines, knock yourself out. But those of you who are looking around and saying, man, I don't want my kids taken away. We just had another mom in California, if you read the Daily Wire, who lost her job because she specifically stood up and said she was not on board with the LGBTQ agenda that was going on in San Bernardino. I mean, it's out there. It's waiting for you. It's a trap that has been sprung already. It has already been set, and you can walk into it. Like, you've already seen people in front of you get taken out by it. So if you're not paying attention to that, you can make a plan now. I'm not saying everybody has to immediately pick up and beat feet, but I'm just saying you've got options. I know that my buddy Bongino has also made the same recommendation. It doesn't mean it's not hard. Of course it'll be hard. But the danger of putting your kids at risk of dealing with some of these insane blue states. I drove around through Northern California when we were there for a family funeral, and they have signs up advertising how proud they are that they're going to be funding late-term abortions with state money. So you're funding a lot of evil when you live in that area. And if you're doing it so that you can fight back, there's a way to get away with it. I get it, but it's a difficult time. Before we get too deep in the weeds on that, and we will talk some really weird stuff, I imagine, tomorrow with Jake. I'm looking forward to hearing what he has to say. Like I said, the QAnon shaman, who I feel uncomfortable with, I'm going to let him introduce himself. But Jake Chansley is going to be joining us tomorrow for a live interview, so definitely tune in for that. And as you saw, we'll put this FBI document up on our Twitter page as well. So if you're not following us on Truth and Twitter, you can find it at Kyle Seraphin. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been the Kyle Seraphin Show for Wednesday, August the 23rd. And we are streaming you live from Liberty Hill, Texas. Probably get canceled off YouTube for the 5 of you that watch over there. Looks like 10 of you are watching right now on YouTube. So we do appreciate you guys sharing the message on our platforms that we are not primarily on. We do stream live from rumble.com/Kyle Seraphin. That's where you can find our channel. Give us a thumbs up on there if you like what you have to hear. Share this message and make it a little bit larger if you like. We have over 650 reviews on Apple, so we do want to thank you guys for that. And today's review comes from Jarhead Hooser. Jarhead to Airman. I assume that this Jarhead is calling me Airman. I'm okay with that. It says, don't stop what you're doing. Your Wednesday 8:15 show was one of your best. Get on more guests too. Dave Sawyer. Okay, so Dave, thank you for that. We will have more guests on, like I said, like tomorrow's guest. I think you guys are going to want to tune in and see what he has to say. I'm going to ask him some hard questions because I have some real serious concerns about what makes somebody show up looking like that, like he was going to like a Vikings game. But I'm going to give him the opportunity to say it in a fair way. And I know many of you have seen his story in other places, so you won't be hearing necessarily something groundbreaking, but I always try to get to that one moment where somebody says, no one's ever asked me that before. I'm going to work on getting there with Mr. Chansley tomorrow. I want to say thanks to Ryan Matta for the production today, playing up all the clips, getting it all queued up, did a great job. So follow Ryan Matta on Twitter, at Ryan Matta, M-A-T-T-A. And don't forget, you can find your Suspendables merch at the-suspendables.com. The-suspendables.com. You can find the Suspendables merch. There it is right there. The merch has been freed. The-suspendables.com. Go find a t-shirt if you like it or some of the other stuff. We got some lapel pins if you want to wear it if you're dressing up. That will be kind of nice. And that supports Garrett O'Boyle, our friend, FBI whistleblower, and probably also sitting out in the chat. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe if you are anywhere where you can subscribe, and we do appreciate you listening on the audio podcast too. I hope today was a little bit more audio friendly with a little less of the long music pieces. Folks, we'll see you again tomorrow on Thursday. Have a great day.
Thanks for listening to the Kyle Seraphin Show, streamed live weekdays on rumble.com/Kyle Seraphin. Follow Kyle on Twitter, Truth Social, and Instagram at Kyle Seraphin.